Hi, welcome to the Forecasting for Success podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Brie. I'm a doctor of psychology, financial educator, astrologer, and founder of Forecasting for Success, a community of people improving their financial literacy to achieve financial independence. I blend my expertise as a former professor and financial intelligence analyst with the tool of astrology to help break down why you are struggling with specific money habits and the best way to form more intentional responses and choices when it comes to money, especially to help you feel more secure in your financial decisions and improve your money skills for building long-term wealth. Welcome back to the Forecasting for Success podcast. I'm so happy that you're here. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review the show because your support really helps me and the show continue to do well. You can also share this show with a friend, which I'd really appreciate, as well as send me your comments and questions that I can help answer in future episodes. You can reach me at forecastingforsuccess.com/podcast. The full transcripts of every episode are also posted to my website, and you can find the link in the show notes of each episode, along with other helpful resources, which include signing up for my free monthly investing masterclass, where I teach the basics of why and how to invest in the stock market, how to invest even if you're paying off debt, and it includes a live question and answer session and free money guide at the end. So click on the link in the show notes to sign up, and I'll see you in the next class. My guest today is Emily, who has questions about being at a crossroads in her life and wanting to better understand her choices when it comes to money. Emily is experiencing the peak of her once-in-a-lifetime transit of Neptune square Neptune, which explains why she's feeling a level of uncertainty. Plus, we get into why it's important to have a financial backup plan during a transit like this. Okay, let's get started. So welcome, Emily. Thank you for being here today. And what would you
Thanks
like
for
a
having
reading
me.
about? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in a crossroads type of space in my life. The last 4 years have been a lot of change, and I feel like understanding kind of what's going on and how that affects my resources, my relationship to my resources is just on my mind. So any general thoughts, but in particular, I'm kind of, it's like it's money, but it's also like, what is my purpose on this planet?
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely makes sense for the period of life that you're currently in because you're experiencing the big three, the very stereotypical what they call midlife crisis transits. And so
Hmm.
you've already made it through your Pluto square, but you're currently in your Neptune square.
Okay.
And so what this is a once in a lifetime transit of where your natal Neptune is now square Neptune where it currently is in the sky. And so this will actually peak for you March 9th of this year, but you're going to feel it for another calendar year until about January 26th-ish, just
Okay.
due to the slow moving of this natural planet and because it
Hmm.
retrogrades. And so that's about how much longer you have to go with this transit. And
Okay.
what it represents is a period of time where there's naturally some confusion, some uncertainty, what people refer to as disillusionment. It's kind of like this layer of fog, if you will, to where boundaries are blurred and you're not quite sure what's happening because you feel like certain aspects of either yourself, your personality, or your life are kind of dissolving. And so that's what kind of
Hmm.
gives this feeling, and it ebbs and flows. It can be sometimes at the front of your mind or at the back of your mind, just depending upon what's happening, of what's going on. Like, why do I feel lost? Why do I feel like I've lost parts of myself? Or why do I feel lost in my purpose in life? And that's something that you're feeling very heavily right now at this time of your life. And it really speaks to this cloudiness of those aspects of yourself. And what's interesting is that your natal Neptune is in your third house. And this third
Hmm.
house represents communication. It represents our thoughts, how we speak, how we write, how your mind works, and also how you choose to share what's on your mind with other people, as well as how we get from point A to point B psychologically. So it's very specific to also our thought processes and how we process the data as well, how we give meaning to the data and meaning to our life experiences. So all of
Hmm.
these things right now have a type of blurriness or fogginess to it to where you're changing internally, but it's also causing you to change to how you react to your environment and as well as to others in your immediate circle as well.
Mm-hmm.
So this really speaks to part of the reason why you feel like you're at a crossroad at the moment. It's this feeling of pressure on your life, on yourself that's produced by this square. Because again, it speaks to how you think and communicate. And it also speaks to changes with what makes you feel joyful or how you work through your creativity in life. So it's both of these pieces of
Mm.
yourself that it's really kind of messing with. It's messing with your boundaries and it's the specificity is gone. The specificity of these things and feeling certain about these things is kind of gone right now because these aspects of yourself are going through an evolution.
Mm.
Yeah, so it can be like you likely feel as if like the boundaries of your thoughts and the reflections that you have shifted or thinned, if you will. And so that this is what can cause feelings of being a bit lost or searching for the mental boundaries that you're used to, that you're comfortable with, just to see, where has this gone? Why is this
Mm-hmm.
missing? Why do things feel
Mm-hmm.
more expansive or nebulous, if you will? If that's making sense, if that resonates with you. So one of the,
Yeah.
oh yeah, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, 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 no. I'm just thinking about how I feel these days.
Yeah.
It is like very floaty.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another curious part of this transit is that it's challenging to check in with yourself because you're not quite sure why that sharpness, why that certainty is missing. It's like it's
Mm-hmm.
been dampened. Another important thing about this transit is it is important to try new things and to not worry so much about having, quote, the answer yet. So it's important to not make any permanent or major life decisions during this transit, if possible, if you can help it, and put a pause on anything really major to change about your
Mm-hmm.
life. Because this time period between now and, like I said, January of 2026, what this period is asking you to do, what this transit is asking you to do, is just to try and experiment with new ways of being, new ways of
Mm-hmm.
thinking, new boundaries that you can enact or enforce. It's the experimentation is really important because what you're looking to do is to establish newer boundaries that work better for you in
Okay.
this next phase of your life towards the end of the transit. So it's important to not be too rigid or firm in the moment. And like I said, just try out and test new things. And it doesn't have to be anything major. It doesn't have to be anything extreme. It can be subtle. So for instance, it could be something as simple as if you typically prefer writing in a journal, you could try writing on a laptop in a cafe. Like I said, it doesn't have to be
Right.
anything, completely out of the ordinary for you. But anytime you find yourself questioning, why does this feel different? Why am I pausing at the moment? It's just really important to sit with that to try to understand what is being asked of you or what you're being asked to experiment with or to think in a new way about. So it's just
Okay.
taking those pauses in the moment to try to figure out why.
Mm-hmm. You said something about it peaking in March of this year.
Yeah, exactly. So it's most direct, it's exact on 9 March.
Okay.
So
Does that mean like, I guess, should I be, I guess around that time, is it more like bigger things or like it's just going to feel more foggy or more heavy?
yeah, so typically, whenever the transit is, quote, exact, and it means that the degrees and the minutes are an exact match. So, for
Mm,
instance, your natal Neptune is at 29 degrees and 11 minutes of Sagittarius. And then on 9 March, it's going to be those exact degrees and minutes of Pisces. And that's
gotcha.
that's what makes an exact square. So stereotypically what this means is it'll feel specific to this transit, it'll feel most confusing or most foggy during this time period, or you might
Hmm.
experience something very unusual out of the ordinary that it's going to test your boundaries
Hmm.
specific to this placement. So, like I said, since you're natal Neptune is in the third house, it might be something specific to experiencing an unusual event to where your way of thinking is challenged. You're being challenged to communicate in a new or different way. Or it might have to do with you being asked to be creative or think outside the box, and even discovering something new in the world that brings you joy that you were not expecting. You would not expect to enjoy something as much as you do because, again, you either meet a new person or a new group of people and they expose you to something to where you get creativity or joy out of something that you would not have expected to like that much.
Okay.
And so that's why the exactness of the transits are important, because it gives you a time frame to where it's most likely to occur.
Right.
But again, the whole period is important to know, because for this transit, it's about experimentation. So now you know the period of time to where things are going to be a little bit foggy. And if you had
Yes.
something specific to play around with, you know that this period of time is the best in which to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before I get back to my notes, I actually forgot to say your birth information for
Yeah.
the recording. So for anyone who would like to follow along, we're going to share your birth information. So you were born on April 14th, 1983 at 7:08 p.m. in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, so I think I was going to give you another example with what I was saying previously. So here I've got a little note that says, for example, it's common to have a renewed outlook on your spirituality or even wanting to pivot your career with this transit. But it's important to sit with whatever changes you may want to make and just be sure that you clearly know why you want to change something, which is why waiting until the end of the transit is recommended when possible for making any major or big changes in your life.
Okay.
I did want to point out or just draw attention to that it's important to practice critical thinking during these, quote, midlife crisis transits, because the pressure that these transits often bring to us during this time period, they can cause regret if there's any very sudden or rash decisions that are made. In case we feel the pressure too strongly during this period of time, it's important to remember to just try to ground yourself into why you want to make a change. And just remember that it's okay to go slow and to be purposeful with whatever changes you decide to implement. It's not required to do things very suddenly and very quickly if you can help it. Going slow and purposeful is encouraged. And it's really
Okay.
good to practice that during your Neptune transit, because after the Neptune square will come your Uranus opposition. And the Uranus opposition is typically what causes us to feel like we're running out of time, to really feel pressure as if we have to make very sudden and quick changes. So it's good to try to practice pausing and critical thinking through second and third order effects for long-term effects on our lives during this transit, so that we've learned how to hit pause for when the Uranus transit happens in a couple of years for you. So I did just want to highlight that so you can be prepared.
These transits really are like hit, 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 right?
Yeah. It's funny that it's prolonged for our generation, because our birthdays are actually just a few days apart.
Oh, wow.
And usually for some past generations, all three of them are almost right on top of each other. And I think that's why when we were growing up, we heard these stories about these, a lot of people having these major midlife crises. And I think it's because some of the past generations, they were all right on top of each other. But for
Oh.
us, it's like the hits just don't stop coming.
Yeah.
With,
Yeah, no.
I'm not quite sure if one's better than the other, because right as we
Right.
feel like we've caught our breath, like, okay, that major transit's over, here comes here comes the
Right.
next one. Oh yeah, I did have another major note about your Neptune square. So on 5 April, what's going to happen is that Neptune is going to cross over into your sixth house. And our
Okay.
sixth house represents our day-to-day routines, our work, the mundane aspects of our work. It also represents our physical health and our physical well-being. And what I found really fascinating about your chart is that your sixth house is at an Aries point. Your sixth house is literally at 0 degrees and 11 minutes of Aries. So I
Okay.
just wanted to ask if this has been mentioned to you before in past readings that you have an Aries point in your chart.
No, I don't actually even know what that means.
Okay, so an Aries point refers to 0 degrees of the four cardinal signs. So
Okay.
anytime a planet or a house is at this Aries point of 0 degrees, again, of a cardinal sign, it means that this energy is very visible. It's very public or seen in the world, and it's not something that can be easily hidden or kept private. So, for instance, this aspect of yourself is something that is more easily seen by other people. And so this
Hmm.
transit is something that could be noticeable to other people that are in your immediate life or anyone that, for instance, if you had something about you that was very public, this transit would be more noticeable rather than something just you feeling internally.
Interesting. Sorry, when you say that my sixth house is at an Aries, like, because don't that the houses like cover many degrees, right? Or it's like that's where it starts?
Exactly. So
Okay.
so that's what gives your house a specific flavor, if you will. And so your sixth house is in the, I probably need a better word, but it's flavored by Aries. So you could say that
Okay.
Aries rules that house. And so you have, so for instance, when it comes to your day-to-day activities, your day-to-day routines, this would give you definitely a type of independent quality, forward thinking, forward leaning, a very, I know what I'm doing. I got this. Like, let me
Right, right.
like you know how you like things, you know how you like to do things. You don't need to defer to another person or their opinion.
Right.
Like you're going to do it your way, kind of a thing. Like even about your health is that you would try to take ownership of that first
Mm.
before leaning into others' opinions or the way others do things, etc. And so that's just kind of the flavor when it comes to the aspects of that house, if you will.
Okay.
And so since the house begins at an Aries point, it would make the way that you do things, your routines, and the way that you take care of yourself and keep yourself healthy, it would
Hmm.
almost cause this to be a noticeable quality about yourself. And people would pay more attention to you and how you do things versus another person who does not have their sixth house begin at this Aries point, if you will.
Okay.
So when you have major transits right there at the house where it begins, again,
Hmm.
something that changes about your day-to-day routines or changes about the way that you take care of your physical body, it might be something that someone notices, like, hey, I noticed that you changed your routine, or I noticed that you're trying
Right.
something different with your health now. It's just something about you that people pick up on
Hmm.
because of the Aries point.
Okay.
And so when Neptune crosses over that point, because it is asking you to, let's see, how do I want to say this? Because it is asking you to think about the way that you do things and think about if you want to change the way that you do things, that process of you going through those changes, again, it just could be something that's visible.
Yeah.
It's neither good or bad.
Right.
It's just an extra layer specific to your chart.
Okay.
Let's see. This is why I have notes.
Yes.
I lose myself. I go off on these. I'm like a 100-year-old
No,
professor over here.
so many things going on.
All right. So when it comes to this transit, that, like I said, Neptune crossing into this house, I do
Hmm.
recommend leaning into any changes you feel that you want to make or experiment with when it comes to the mundane or your daily routines, since
Okay.
new perspectives and ideas or new ways of being creative with your routine are likely to come up at this time for you. And it's also important to stay proactive about your health. So it's a good idea to be diligent about and consistent with remaining in good health. And also just being mindful of seeking medical support or help sooner rather than later if questions about your well-being were to come up during this time.
Okay.
Just due to the, like we were talking about, the fuzziness or the cloudiness that Neptune can give to aspects, it's just important to remember to keep your health and your wellness at the forefront of your mind. And if for
Okay.
some reason a question were to come up, just to not put it off, that's all.
Okay.
What's interesting is that it can be a good idea to use a combination of Eastern and Western medical techniques during this transit if it were to be needed. So, for example, if you needed to visit a family doctor for treatment, also seek out maybe, like an acupuncturist or whichever applicable specialist would apply for a treatment
Mhm.
plan if something were to occur during this time.
Okay.
I did have a question for you regarding this transit. I was wondering what type of work you do, or more specifically, how consistent your income is.
I don't really work anymore, and I might need to work again soon. Basically, I was a yoga teacher for a long time, and I still sometimes get offers to teach, and then like when they come up, I do
Mhm.
them, but it's not work that I'm actively seeking out. Yeah, I've been super lucky. I had a couple of years where I didn't need to work. And I guess I really thought that during those couple of years, I would have like a revelation about what to do next. And I have not. I feel very like, it's like a tweet or a meme or whatever that's like, oh, what is your dream job? And the person is like, I don't dream of labor. Like
Exactly.
that is how I thought I was going to be like, I'm bored. I need to have like I am not bored and I do not feel a lack of purpose. Like I love not working.
Yeah, that is the right answer.
I have a really wonderful life. So, yes, I do not have like a steady income stream. But yeah, that's what's kind of creating this crossroads is I had this sort of frame of time where I was like, oh, I can afford to not work for like this amount of time. And now I'm like, hmm, and what now?
Yeah, you're like, oh, wait, something has to come next.
Right. Why do you see something about this?
Yes. So I feel your pain since our birthdays are only a couple days apart. Because
Yeah.
these transits are not conducive to concrete answers. And it's very frustrating when you know something needs to change or something needs to be different, but you don't have clarity of thought. There's not a quick and easy solution. So the reason why I asked this question specifically is that sometimes this transit can bring periods of unreliability when it comes to work, which
Mm,
obviously affects income. So I
right.
was just going to highlight that during transits like this, it's important to make sure that your emergency fund is healthy and topped up, and that you give any
Hmm.
serious thought to major purchases and realistically consider like a financial backup plan just in case unexpected things start to happen with the specificity of these transits.
Okay.
So obviously it's not guaranteed. So it's not to say that something like that will happen. It's just something to be
Right.
aware of. It's more about shoring up your foundations, if you will, just so that both you as a person, as your physical body, and your financial health both remain strong and healthy during transits like this.
Okay.
So it's really challenging when you're trying to do the right thing. Like you're saying, you know that something needs to change. You know that you need to seek out stability or something that's more conducive for you about your financial health during this time. But it's a struggle whenever there's these types of complications or this like resistant energy during this time period. So
Hmm.
it's especially for an Aries sun, it's really unfair, if you will. Whenever you're trying to do the right thing, you're trying to be proactive and get ahead of it, but then you experience this very nebulous resistance where you can't quite get
Yeah.
a clear solution. So it's not you, it's the transit.
Yeah, it does feel very, I think for several months now, I've been like, well, surely I'll feel like I'm just like, I'm being patient. I'm, you know, surrendering and going with the flow. And then I'm like, but I thought I would know by now, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm trying to let go
So
of that.
yeah, it's like I said, it definitely feels unfair when you are trying to do the right thing or trying to be proactive. It is more about experimenting. It's experimenting with your skill set. It's pushing the boundaries of your skill set. It's pushing the boundaries of how you've used your skills before into trying new and unexpected things. So it's important to be open-minded, to be more playful with your creativity and more playful with how you apply your skill set or like I said, test it out differently
Hmm.
and to try to be patient.
Hmm.
And I apologize for having to use that phrase because I also don't take that phrase well.
Not my favorite, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't like that phrase either. And just to wait for the end of the transit to have something much more concrete to move forward with. And so it's a better time to not worry so much about, quote the answer and just try to
Right.
focus your energy on, like I said, just creativity and experimentation. I think those are the two biggest keywords right now for how you apply your skills and use your time. It's one of those transits to where you have to go through the process and not resist the
Yeah.
process in order to genuinely move ahead, to not be stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just so interesting. It's like I've had several actually sort of I've done a few rituals and spiritual things where I'm trying to it's basically like I would like somebody to tell me like now's the time to push like do you know you have to take action you have to whatever and everything that's coming back to me is like walk in like practice having like a patient abundant mindset
Yeah.
work
And
on like your faith and I'm like oh
that does not vibe.
it's like really hoping for an action but okay I mean it's an
Yes.
action
It is
surrender
a
is a type of action.
yeah, it's a soft action and that's why it feels
Yes.
so unnatural.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't like it either. All right. Do you have any final questions or thoughts about this Neptune square before I move on to the next transit?
I don't think so. It makes a lot of sense.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. So the next transit that I have for you on April 9th, Uranus is going to be entering your eighth house. And so that's another major transition for you because this house represents how our bodies and our money become intimate with others. So this represents things like our sexual lives, our joint finances, our taxes, etc., as well as deep psychological work and transformation. And so Uranus is the planet known for very sudden change. And so that's kind of going to be the theme of how it will influence this area of your life whenever it begins, whenever it crosses that threshold, April of this year. Another really interesting thing about your natal chart is that your eighth house is ruled by Taurus. And that's one of
Mhm.
the two natural signs of Venus, which is the planet of what we value. And your Venus is also in this house in the sign of Gemini. And the
Mhm.
fascinating part to me is that your natal Mercury is next door in the seventh house, which is the house of one on one relationships. And your natal Mercury is in the sign of Taurus. So, what this
Mhm.
means is your two planets are a mutual reception, they're in each other's natural signs. And
Oh,
so, you have what
I
I
never
like
thought
to.
about that.
So you have what I like to call a natural gift of sweet talking others. And so what this means is you can identify what others value intuitively very quickly and then describe back to someone their values in great detail which can make the other person feel very seen and very valued as an individual. And so I can definitely see how this, again, what I phrase as sweet talking, how this skill could be of great benefit. So I'm not sure if you've experienced it to that specificity or if you've experienced something like that in your life, but that's how I see this aspect working in your
Hmm.
chart.
Yeah, that's that sounds true. I think I more actually what that brought up for me is like I mean for a number of reasons I'm very careful about communication and have like worked very hard on it. I think in good ways like to better my relationships but also sometimes in defensive and like trauma induced ways.
Okay.
Like I'm very afraid to be misunderstood and I think I
Mm,
can stave it off kind of. And I have had relationships where I have realized it can like cross over into seeming manipulative, like
I see.
I know how to read someone and like yeah, make them feel right. It's like anything can sort of switch over to seeming malicious depending on your intention, right? Like I very naturally I think do that for people. But if I decided to do it out of like I want to get something from you, then it becomes something else.
Yeah. That's really interesting that you would bring up that type of example of someone else's perception of how you're
Hmm.
trying to communicate with them. I didn't think about it in that way because in your chart, you've got your sun right on the seventh house, and your Pluto is opposite your sun right on your ascendant. And
Yes.
so it makes this Pluto again very visible because that's right there. It's right there as they experience your identity and your worldview, how they perceive you. And so I didn't think about it in that way, that it would be coming through this filter of Pluto, because Pluto is, I think with this example, I'll say there's people can feel darkness. They can feel the manipulation, the more negative aspects. So that's really
Hmm.
unfortunate that people would assume negative intent rather than assume
Mm.
good intent, if you will, due to this, I guess, that layer of Pluto being visible in your chart.
Yeah, and it hasn't been, it's not like something I get accused of a lot or anything, but it's happened where I was like, oh, I kind of have to be I try to be really aware of my intentions and like am I honest about them? Because, you know, it feels kind of like, oh, I have a like a little superpower and I can like use it for good or not, you know?
Yeah, that's really interesting.
But yeah, the Pluto on my ascendant crossing my or opposite my sun is so many things.
It is a lot. Just for you in your daily life. It is a lot because I'm sure you've already spoken about this a lot with your astrologer, just how much it asks of you, a constant transformation. Yeah.
I was actually also, I've never dived deep into astrogeography or cartography, but I was born where my Pluto and sun lines cross.
No way. Oh my
It's like
gosh.
literally, it's like right next to, yeah, Atlanta is like, it's crazy.
That that would be heavy. I assume you've
Like,
moved.
yes, yeah.
Okay. Because that's a heavy life.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's,
All right. I'm glad you
yeah.
took it down a notch. That would be a bit much. Alrighty. So just getting back to your Uranus transit.
Yes.
Yes. So I might have already said this, when it enters your eighth house, it just represents a period where, yeah, sudden or unexpected changes can take place. Yeah,
Hmm.
I already said all that. Let's see. Where did I go? The sudden changes that Uranus can bring, it can be obviously challenging or jarring, but the changes have a purpose. Any changes that are experienced during this time period, it is meant to give you more room or more freedom in this area of life, especially for innovation. So that includes things like increasing your intuition or using your intuition in new ways as well. So it's not meant to just be a pain point for the sake of being a pain point. It really is meant to break up any stagnant energy in this area of your life
Hmm.
so you can level up so that bigger and better things can come along in this area of your life.
Yeah.
So, just as a heads up, it is a good idea, again, to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row when it comes to your money, just in case life decides to test you. So, this specifically, it can mean things like making sure taxes are filed on time, that you have backups of any paperwork that are important whenever it comes to any aspect of finance or money, double check on things as necessary, and also having experts on standby if you were to end up needing help with something. So just having
Hmm.
someone that you can call that's like a trusted CPA or a trusted attorney if you were to need professional assistance. And again, it's not to say that any of this will happen. It's just making sure
Right.
that we have foundations in place as a just in case. I do have a question. It's totally up to you if you want to answer it or not. There's a purpose to this question of if you're in a committed or long-term relationship at the moment.
I'm not.
Okay. I know that this is a money podcast, but just real quick.
Go ahead. I just finalized my divorce actually like a month ago.
Oh, wow. Well,
Mhm.
congratulations. I hope that you're doing better. I hope that you're in a better place.
Oh yeah, everything is great.
Okay, good. I'm very happy for you then. And the only reason why I ask this question is because with this specific transit of Uranus being in this house, it also can represent exploring your sexual life in new ways. So I just wanted to highlight practicing safe sex. And the
Hmm.
only reason why I felt called to mention this is because of the Neptune transit. Again, when we
Mm.
have transits of Uranus and Neptune, it can put our critical thinking on the back burner. And so because Neptune is going to be in your sixth house of health, I just want you to please try to keep in the forefront of your mind if you choose to be partnered, because again,
Right.
you might decide to be done with partnering and no judgment at all.
Yes.
But again, just due to that Neptune being in your sixth house of health, I just wanted to highlight to just please be safe and
Yeah.
proactive with your well-being.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Let's see. Oh, yeah, I mentioned that Venus is in your eighth house as well, but Uranus is not actually going to be conjunct with your natal Venus until 28 May of 2026.
Hmm.
So there is some time until you feel that part of the transit. It is going to get pretty close to your Venus in September of this year, but then it's going to retrograde. So it's
And
not
then it
actually going to
retrogrades.
touch the Venus. It's just going to get a little close. So when the conjunction does occur, you are likely to experience unexpected events that'll kind of it'll force you into a decision-making process or force you into a choice
Mhm.
where it's testing you on choosing your true values. It's going to test you on if you have learned the life lesson of making sure you put yourself first and you hold to your boundaries. And the reason why this specific type of test will come up for you is because right now during the Neptune transit, your boundaries are actually changing. It's
Mhm.
influencing your values and your day-to-day habits. And so that's why when this Uranus transit comes along, it's going to make sure that you know what your values are specifically and why you need
Mhm.
to put yourself first and protect yourself, if you will.
Okay. Sorry, when did you say that that exact conjunction will be in 2026?
Yeah, so the exact conjunction is 28 May
Okay.
2026. So I'm actually not really worried about you being able to hold your boundaries just due to your other natural placements. So, Aries, Sun, etc.
Hmm.
Other types of people can really struggle with a transit like this. I'm honestly not worried about this transit for you, that you're able to know yourself, know your values, hold your boundaries, etc. This period of time is more about it's asking you to keep your emergency fund topped up since it could be frustrating to have unexpected events or unexpected expenses pop up that are no fault of your own. And so I think that
Mm.
could be more of the suddenness or the upsetting part of this transit. Again, it's not so much about your values or boundaries. To me, that would be very clear to you. It's more about consequences that you have to deal with, even though you didn't do anything wrong.
Okay.
And that's the frustrating part in my assumption of this transit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Uranus-Venus conjunction is more about choosing options that would support stable financial plans or stable financial actions rather than spontaneous investments or major purchases without thinking them through or considering long-term effects, if you will.
Okay.
The good news about this transit is that it's actually an excellent time to experiment with artistic or very uniquely creative ideas to where you can be more open or playful than what might be typical for you. Because it can be a very
Okay.
helpful time to open up to new ways of expressing or sharing with others what you value.
Okay.
Yeah. So those are actually the two major transits that I see happening for you right now that
Mm-hmm.
would cause you to pause and be like, what's happening? Like where am I going? Why are things weird? And so those
Right.
are the two major things that I see in the moment for you. But I did just
Mm-hmm.
want to check in to ask if this was applicable to what you're experiencing, or maybe a new question has come up for you that I could try to clarify for you.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it feels very much like what is happening. I think I'm more like, yeah, I think it's more just like I've been trying to understand like how I should approach, like should I, basically I had this like one career and it doesn't feel aligned with me anymore, but it is like where all my skills are, and it would be the easiest thing for me to go, to go back to in order to create stable finances. And I've like been resistant to it because it feels like an act of fear, like I can't do anything
Hmm.
else or I don't know what to do. So like I should just go back and like make some money and whatever. And yeah, I'm not sure. That's the main thing on my mind right now is sort of like, oh, should I be pursuing other avenues? It feels like too, I guess it feels like a divergent, like just based on what you've said, it's kind of like art and experimentation and all of these things, but then also like have stable finances, you know?
It's like they don't line
Uh,
up. So you're like, I'm trying.
yeah. And I've always been really, the notion of like, oh, well, like do something just for money and then you can like do your passion and on the side has never really resonated with me. Like, I understand that it's a reality for a lot of people, but it feels energetically like not the move. I don't know.
Let's see. I have a question first. Where's your north? Hang on. Where's your north node? Yeah,
It's in
your north
the
node's
sign of
in Gemini.
Gemini.
Let's see. When you want to be seen, when you want to be known for something, does it include the layer of wanting to be seen as like a mentor, if you will, someone who others can come to you for advice or to see how you lived your life and that can be served as an example for others? Is that included at all?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But like not in a like, yeah, not, I feel my understanding of my nodes is that like Sagittarius as a south node is very sort of teacher, preacher, this kind of like, yeah. So
Exactly.
that's I feel like that's what no longer resonates with me, but the way you just phrased that, like being able to share my very interesting life is, yeah, I think that's the thing that makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's definitely moving away from it's not, I don't mean it in a professorship way or someone who
Right.
would be on a soapbox. I definitely don't mean that. You're right. We would want to
Yeah.
move away from that. I think where I was really getting that from was you moving towards your north node. And it's helpful that Venus is in Gemini along with your north node. That's actually very helpful because as your values change, it'll help you express those values more succinctly, more directly.
Hmm.
And I was also looking at your midheaven, which is in Cancer. And so I was thinking of it more of a more intimate way, more almost familial, if you will. It's a much
Mhm.
more intimate or friendly way in order to mentor others, not in a I'm telling you what to do way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, getting back to your original question, when you were explaining how you feel like the roads are diverging, 100% that this is definitely a time of experimentation. And it's a very common period in people's lives to where they do pivot careers. That is actually very typical for people during this phase of life to where they,
Hmm.
and again, that experimentation is what is so critical because that's how you get to where you need to go. So it's not about very abruptly stopping what's been working or stopping what you know to do. It's about kind of having something consistent on the back burner, but making sure that you're giving space to the experimentation and trying new things in new ways because the testing out, the trying as many new things as you can is where you suddenly start connecting the dots.
Hmm.
Because you mentioned something a moment ago about how you mentioned something about resistance. I can't quite remember how you phrased it.
That I'm resistant to this notion of like the play it safe kind of mindset.
Right,
I feel like I grew up, I don't know if you grew up similarly at the same time with this like, oh yeah, it's great to be passionate about something, but like you need to be reasonable and like, it doesn't matter if you love your job, you need to like have a steady income and like have benefits and have whatever. And then like you can always do your passions on the side. And I've always felt that is like, it's kind of like, okay, the way that I see it is sort of
hmm
like if I want to invite somebody to come like stay in my house and I'm like, I love you, like come live with me, like I want you to be a part of my life, and I don't like clear out my closet, or like give them room to like it's like if I really wanted to invite something into my life, I'd be like, I got your favorite flowers and your books and like I made this space for you and I cleared out space, like you belong here. And sometimes I think about that as like, oh, if I really have like a dream life and I'm like, okay, well, I can like devote, 2 to 3 hours to you a week when I'm not busy doing this other thing that I don't like. I feel like that energy is speaks for itself. It's like I'm more scared than I am trusting.
Yeah, it's what I'm hearing too. It feels like you're being prevented from being authentic. Like the advice that people recommend, it's not applicable to who you are and how you want to live your life.
Yes.
So I definitely agree to implement your unique ways of doing things and your unique ways of being because the very stereotypical advice, I agree, it does not apply to you and the way you live your life. So that's definitely something you can leave in the past. That's not something that applies to you or your situation. So I agree that in this period of transition, you might do something that you're comfortable with. So you had mentioned teaching yoga before. So for
Hmm.
example, that might be something that you can do again because it is something easy for you to implement quickly.
Right.
However, that does not mean that you would be forced to only move ahead with doing, yoga forever or tweaking yoga a little bit, but it's still technically yoga and that's what you do for the next 20 years. Like
Right.
that's not what we mean. Like
Right.
like yes, technically you could use it for income at the moment, but you could end up doing something, wildly different, something totally different that has nothing to do with yoga if you wanted it. And
Mhm.
that's what this time is about. That's what the experimentation is about. Because you shouldn't have to be forced to hold on to something from your past, like teaching yoga,
Right.
if that no longer resonates and doesn't apply to your life now, moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's about trying new things, going to new places if it applies, meeting new people, joining new groups, anything that you can think of that would spark creativity or introduce you into new concepts or ideas, or even help you meet a new person that would kind of, what is it, pinball? It would pinball you into
Yeah,
new
yeah, yeah.
thoughts and new ideas and you connecting the dots and, oh, that's where I'm going, or that's what I need to do, or that interests me. And then it helps you move in the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
I hope that made sense
Yes,
or
for
helped
sure.
answer the question.
Yes.
Is there anything else
Yeah.
that I could help clarify when it comes to your question?
I don't think so.
Okay. You're actually doing pretty good on the transits, to be honest with you. Because like I said, at this time of life, a lot of things can layer and it's just so messy. It's just so complicated.
It is.
Yeah, but thankfully your Pluto square is pretty much done. Pluto has moved
Mm-hmm.
on. And then you get to focus more on this Neptune. Then after that'll be Uranus. Just
Amazing.
one at a time.
Yes. Yeah, my chart is really like clumpy, you know. I feel like everything is like grouped in these two areas.
Mhm.
So it feels sort of like either like a lot is happening or like nothing is happening.
Yeah, you do have what's called a seesaw chart. And a seesaw
Okay.
chart can be what I like to think of it as is the energy kind of moves like a pendulum. Because you're
Mm-hmm.
right, things are kind of clustered on two ends. And so it is kind of wild because you feel like you're moving in between two extremes
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, yeah.
But the middle part can be a nice little break.
Yes.
When the pendulum's kind of in the middle, you kind of get to catch your breath.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, because my
Yeah. I've also, I don't know if you like something I've heard a lot about is also just my because my ascendant is opposite my sun,
mhm.
that and they're like directly, right,
Yeah.
opposite. So that is also somebody once told me that it's sort of like driving a car. Like it's like he was like, it's like you're trying to drive a car with one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake, and you just keep
Oh,
like pushing both of them. And he was just like, your job in life is literally to put the car in neutral and like take all the pressure off. Again, I'm like, what do you mean do nothing?
you do not tell an Aries sun to do nothing.
Right? It's like what?
He was doing
So
good with the pedal analogy and then he blew it.
exactly. So yeah, I'm always just like, okay, more surrender. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ooh, ooh, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
The pedal analogy is good though.
Yeah, it feels it's like stop fighting yourself, I think is the
Yeah.
what I try to remember.
Yeah. I think it's so funny how all of us astrologers, we have a different way of explaining things. I think the analogy I would use is learn to be comfortable with how little we control.
Mhm.
I think that's how I would phrase it because you still have to be actionable. You still have to be
Right.
purposeful in your choices and where you're going, and you have to own your mistakes and you have to own your transformations.
Yes.
And so I guess the way that I read your chart, it's less to me, and again, it doesn't mean I'm right. It's just the way that I view it. It's less about surrendering and just more about being comfortable over time with the flow of life. Kind of like how you
Mhm.
can't trap a river moves, and we just have to
Mhm.
accept that we move with the river.
Mhm.
But we can still actively swim in the river. Like we can direct where we're moving in the river. We don't just have to completely, go limp,
Right.
if you will. I guess in my opinion,
Yeah.
that's the way I read it. That's probably neither here nor there.
I like it.
Well, I think that's all I have for you. I
Thank you
definitely
so
appreciate
much.
you doing this, and I hope it was useful to you.
Absolutely. Very interesting. Yeah, I hadn't really looked at these transits, so it's very interesting.
Hopefully your traditional astrologer will be okay. Hopefully I've not said anything too out of bounds.
Oh, I'm sure.
I want to thank you so much for joining me this week on Forecasting for Success and let you know that you can read the transcript for each podcast episode on my website, which is linked below in the show notes. I've also included the link to send me your money questions if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast at forecastingforsuccess.com/podcast. And if you're ready to get started on improving your financial literacy and developing your own personalized money plan, I encourage you to join my Forecasting for Success community, where I teach you everything you need to know about budgeting, how to choose your retirement number, how to invest in the stock market, and so much more. I go live in the community each month to check in on your progress and help answer any questions you may have. And it's a supportive community where you can also check in with other members and learn from their experiences as well. I hope you take good care of yourself, and I'll talk to you next week.